Have you ever stayed or been to a spiritual tourist trap? Stay tuned and we'll discuss it. Hi everybody, and welcome back to another video by Pan Society. I'm Cherie, and today we're going to be talking about spiritual tourist traps. But first, I want to take a couple of seconds and just have some gratitude, first of all, for you guys for taking the time to watch this video, and then for all this nature that's happening right now. I don't know if you can hear all the birds. It's really crazy. The sun is getting ready to set. It's been rainy all day, but then the sun came out afterwards, and I know tonight when the frogs come out, it's going to be so loud and beautiful when they're all croaking and singing for each other. So I love it. I really, really love all this light that's happening around me. And right here, there's like little nuthatches just hanging out watching what I'm doing. All right, sorry about that little detour. It just tickles me. But I wanted to talk about spiritual tourist traps because recently I was traveling and I experienced just that. And you'll see a lot of them in the US, outside of the US, wherever you travel, unfortunately, because there's always going to be a market for that kind of thing, and they're really, really hard to avoid. So I want to start off by saying everything I'm saying about this is my experiences, my opinions, and you can take whatever you want from, this conversation and come to your own conclusions. In the end, you're just going to have to trust your own judgment and respect and honor what feels good to you and what feels right to you. Spiritual tourist traps are, let's start off with retreat centers and places that you're staying. So I'm not lumping all of them together. I say retreat centers because that seems to be a common theme, but they're not all spiritual tourist traps. They're the ones that are kind of like hotels, like boutique hotels, or you're staying there and then you realize all the services they offer. They'll offer, like for example, recently the one I went to, there was a sweat lodge, a teepee. They had Native American rituals. They also offered Indian practices, yoga. There's combinations of things, and I'm not against fusions of things, but it has to be done artfully and appropriately. So that being said, like with all this stuff, oh, and there were African drumming and Yoruba type things. So these are not necessarily conflicting ideologies or modalities, but the people that were offering them were not of those cultures or of those belief systems. They were very, I would say, spiritual seekers themselves, and then learned something and then wanted to teach it and pass it on. Which brings us to the point that if it's not yours, you shouldn't be sharing it. Like, it's great if somebody else shared something of their culture with you. That's a gift of love. For whatever reason they taught you or talked to you about it or showed you, that was that moment. And it's a little unscrupulous to take that and then go and teach other people or heal other people or show other people that, because it's not yours to share. It's kind of like a secret, right? Like if someone's going to tell you something, you're not going to tell everybody else about it. So it's kind of the same thing. Like it's not yours. So when we're at these hotels or retreat centers or whatever that are geared towards that, like they're kind of catch-alls. Like they perform rituals of all kinds or ceremonies of all cultures because they're trying to just grab as many people as they can that feel like that are on spiritual paths themselves, so they're more open to experiencing everything, and then not seeing that the people offering them are not supposed to be sharing those things, or may not even be that knowledgeable about them. They got one song or maybe one lesson out of something, and then they're out there teaching or sharing, and that could kind of lead to some possible damage as well, spiritually or even physically sometimes, depending on what the ceremony is. Now, once again, not all retreat centers are like this. Not all hotels are like this. Not spa centers. Not all of them. So you have to use your judgment on what it is. So if you are going to a yoga retreat and they're doing all yoga, different styles of yoga, that's not a spiritual tourist trap. That is a yoga retreat. I'm talking about the place that you go and they're offering a little bit of everything, and the cultures that those came from, there's not a representative from them there. Now let's talk a little bit bigger, and let's talk about like towns or areas maybe that are spiritual tourist traps. Once again, this is when you go into an area, it's a little more expensive, everybody's got a healing thing, and the way these develop is somebody went there before, had some healing, raved about it, and then the word gets around and everybody starts flocking to these places. And then what'll happen is people will start building businesses around that. So you'll walk into a store and it will be selling dream catchers, Native American flutes, African drums, and I'm not talking like a new age store, but like a trinket store, like where you would buy like bits and bobs to take home and give as gifts and whatever. So these aren't even serious shops or anything like that. They're teaching these things. It's the biggest clue is all these items are made in China and mass produced and not coming from the actual tribes or indigenous peoples that those items, those objects naturally come from. So you'll know that they're not actually well made. They don't come from the country or the tribe or the peoples that that item is supposed to be from. So like the drums, the dream catchers, these will all be made in China type things you can order mass produced and very cheap, and they can resell them at higher prices. And you'll notice that in most of these areas, a lot of the stores in the area will carry the same things, maybe just different versions or different colors or whatever, but generally it's the same thing. And it's just because collectively they know a lot of people are flocking to this area now for spiritual learning or experiences, and that's why it's easy to make these sales to them. So unfortunately, when some people learn about awesome spiritual tracks and things like that, things like this can happen. So now, that's not to say when you go to these areas to visit that the magic is gone. That is probably never ever true. You just have to use more intuition, a little more gut checking, and feeling free to say no, that's not what I want, and continue searching for what you really are looking for. Now the reason I bring all this up as we're talking about this is because we're all always on a journey, we're always growing, we're always developing, and we're always changing. So it's easy when something sounds great, right, or it resonates with us easily, and we're like, oh, maybe that's meant to be, maybe that's what we need to have. And then you have people that are just really great salesmen and will be taking advantage of you. So if you were on a hard spiritual journey where you're in a huge shift or a flux, and you want to be open-minded, especially if you came from a background of not having any of that, and all of a sudden you just want to open your heart, open your mind. These are those times where you kind of really need to gut check yourself and be sure that you're on the right path for yourself, and not feeding into those industries, so that you are getting the true things that you need, and from the indigenous peoples that they're from, and so that it's the proper person sharing their culture and not someone else just stealing it or not knowing any better and just passing it along as if it was theirs. So there have been a couple of times that I get drawn to places, and then you walk in and you're like, oh, I don't know why I'm here, and I didn't know it's like this. But if you really look, like spend your time looking around, you will find what you're looking for. You will find the real people. You will find the spiritual places. It doesn't always have to be fancy and glittery. Even if it's just walking around a town and seeing the real people there, or the buildings, or just taking a moment and absorbing the energy that's there if you can, like if it's not too bogged down with too many people. I hope this doesn't scare you from spiritual traveling. because it's with vacation things too. You're going to face this kind of thing anywhere you go. It's just being better armed and knowing what you're looking for and knowing what to expect, and then being strong enough to say, no, that's not what I want, that's not what I'm looking for. Have you ever stayed in a tourist trap or passed through one? I tend to pass through these when driving on road trips too. Comment down below, share your story with us. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time in another pan video.